everyone, to our next episode of the IDCA Wellness for Tech podcast. I am so proud and excited to be your host today. As a chaos guru, I know all too well, being an IT leader and into wellness, how chaotic and stressful things can be sometimes. So we are especially excited today to bring an inspirational leader, both in the federal government space and in the wellness space, which is truly unique. So today I'm honored by our guest, Angela Bailey. Angela began her career with the Social Security Administration. And over the next 40 years, she earned her BA and MA in leadership and became a senior executive and has held numerous positions in the federal government space and the Department of Defense. She recently retired from the federal service in 2022 and founded AnandaLife through Angela Bailey and Associates and the Story Behind the Story podcast, utilizing her experiences along with her passion to elevate the human experience, both at work and at home. She is dedicating this next part of her journey to paying it forward and sharing her knowledge, insight, and life experiences on achieving personal and professional leadership excellence, becoming an innovation catalyst, and finding coherence of mind, body, and spirit. What perfect podcast host guest can we have here? So I'm so grateful, Angela, to have you on our podcast today. So welcome. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's jump right in. I'm sure everyone would love to hear all about your experiences, both in the federal government space as well as in wellness, and how you're able to blend both worlds together. So let's start. Our first question is usually, in your role currently, or even in your previous roles, how have you been able to foster and empower staff to prioritize their health and wellness over all else?
Well, right now, since retiring, I'm a staff of one, unless, of course, I count Alexa on Amazon. She's become my assistant, so I think she's helped me. Actually, now that I just said her name, she just asked me what she can help me with. So I'll go back to my DHS days and at the Department of Homeland Security. And one of the things that I really notice is that as such a very large law enforcement agency, one of the things that really struck me was how much we really needed to take care of our workforce. Because if we weren't taking care of them, then it almost becomes impossible for them to be able to take care of those that they're charged with taking care of, right? So, that's whether it's responding to disasters or tracking down terrorists or drug traffickers or protecting our borders, et cetera, or, making sure that the planes fly safely in the sky. The mission goes on and on for DHS. And so it really became, I would say, a passion for me to try to make sure that we help to take care of them. Because when you go out in the field, meaning you go out and you sit down with them and you talk to them, the thing that you really experience is that they're human beings just like the rest of us. And they have real stories and they have real lives and real challenges and things. And so that was really became so important to me, is that we figured out how to elevate their human, whether it was at work or at home, just because it just seemed like, honestly, it was just the right thing to do.
So when you first started talking about, because we're talking about police officers and law enforcement, who you would think are kind of alpha male folks that really want to play that role to protect other people. And when you started talking about mind, body, and spirit and energy and things like that, what was their first reaction to it?
Well, incredibly, and this is what I think just made my heart so happy, is that incredibly leadership was fully behind it. So when you have leadership fully behind something, then it makes it so much easier to be able to do it. And, everybody from my boss, Chip Foljam, to Tex Alice, to Kari Huffman at the Customs Border and Protection, just to name a few. And if you notice, I name men, that actually got it, right? That they completely understood, yet making sure that we had a resilient workforce and that we did everything that we could to help provide them the tools that they needed to better they were all for that. And so, again, that's what made it, I think, so much easier. And yes, I mean, I think part of it is like, it would be like, oh my God, what's she gonna introduce now? Or what's she gonna ask us to do now? And, but they were such good sports about it that they let me do all of these things. I remember during COVID, I actually had the opportunity to write to all 250,000 DHS employees once a week and just share with them, the struggles that I'm having during COVID, like trying to figure all this out. But then they would share back with me. And sometimes I would respond to, at 3 a.m. in the morning, I was responding to hundreds of DHS who wrote back to me to share everything with me of what was going on. So that's whenever I really learned, and leadership got a taste of, it's all about the human connection. And if we create the human connection and we, again, elevate that human experience, it was amazing how we banded together and we were able to overcome a lot of tragedies, a lot of challenges, or, a lot of things that I think might have broken another agency. It didn't break us.
Wow, that is great to hear. So it sounds like you started something and your organization, your leadership backed you on those missions, which is great to hear, because sometimes that doesn't happen and makes it a lot harder, as you said.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit more about what the organization, DHS or any other organizations, or even your current one, had taken to help their employees with well-being, and how those efforts have proven effective? Like, did you also get any feedback from the employees or from the staff after doing these wellness workshops, or whatever kind of wellness efforts that you promoted out there?
Right. So what we did is we created a council that consisted of all the components. Again, I'm going to draw my DHS days because it's just a wonderful example of, I think, of a successful practice, or at least way to maybe kind of go about this. So what we did is we created a council that consisted of all the different components, and we sat down and we said to ourselves, what are like the main things that our folks are facing, and then what are the tools and things that we can provide to them to help them overcome them. So it became things, as an example, when the government shut down for 35 days, 80% of DHS still had to work. And so provide training as an example. And so, one might say, well, what's that have to do with wellness? But as we all know, when you have financial issues, and you pull that thread on that, it can create a whole lot of mental health issues for folks. We also understood that if their home life was good and things were going well at home, then that translated into having a good work life. Okay. And if things were going well at work, that translated into having a good home life. Yes. So one of the things that we did is we offered, and one of my former bosses, he was kind of, now DHS is offering marriage counseling. And I said, well, kind of, sort of, because like, if you're happy at home, I think you're going to be happy at work. So we, it was called Stronger Bonds. It might have a different name now, but at the time it was called, and we invited both and you could define your partner any way that you wanted. Okay. You didn't have to be married, but we had the partners come in together, and leadership went to that with their spouses and sat in the classes and went through it, and, walked out and did videos afterwards. Kari Huffman, I remember he and his wife did a video, and he said, look, we have a 30-year wonderful marriage, but yet we still learn things, right? We still learned about communication. We still learned about understanding each other. So, we introduced that, and that became like a mainstay of things during COVID, when folks were at FLETC, which is our Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, and they were quarantined for like 14 days, talked to leadership. And I was like, hey, what if we introduce like mindfulness, basically meditation, right? What if we introduce that? Or what if we introduce heart math to folks so that they can learn how to get their heart and their minds into coherence, so that when they knock on a door and their heart's racing, and a suspect comes to the door and flashes a cell phone, that they see a cell phone and not a gun, right? And so by like helping them introduce these things and showing how it helped them through mission readiness. It wasn't just like woo-woo. I mean, back in the day, this would have been considered woo-woo and just an HR thing or just a woman thing. But when you had the the men also participating and understanding that there was value and making sure that their hearts and their minds got into coherence, like it became a game changer for us. And I don't know if you know this, but like the Navy SEALs uses heart math as an example, right? To get the whole unit into coherence before it goes in and does some of its tasks. So I think it's moved out of the woo-woo space and it's moved more into the, wow, we really have to help our employees take care of themselves so that they can take care of the people that they're charged with taking care of.
Right. And that's great, because I know when I really got into wellness about 6 years ago after the birth of my third child, that's when I really started learning. And I had a lot of modalities practiced on me. And I had a life and death situation after that, after my daughter was born. And so I was in a dire need, and I really wasn't going to put myself in the hands of the Western medical system, because I was already in their hands, and this is what happened. And I, you know, something told me like, okay, there has to be another way. I'm not getting multiple surgeries and really no good theory of having a good end result from that. And I had, you know, went to Reiki and craniosacral therapy and Bowen therapy, all kinds of things. And then I started learning some of these for myself. And then I started trying to bring that to the technology and cyber workforce. And it was interesting because 6 years ago, I did a 5-minute meditation for about 500 people in the audience. We're all tech, you know, techies, geeks, and cyber specialists. And I myself was trying to keep myself calm, like, oh my gosh, are people actually going to do this with me? Or are they just going to look at me like I'm crazy? But they all did it. And just that profound effect of 500 people doing at least some like small meditation, just that was like a record breaker. I think we even recorded it. And so I wanted to ask you, like, what got you into, I know you've had lots of different senior executive roles in the government space and DoD. How did you get involved in wellness and mind body energy techniques and in that whole realm?
You know, it's a kind of like I suppose, an interesting path, or it's that, you know, it's funny, when I grew up, I'll say grew up in DoD, I spent 25 years there, and it was very much of suck it up, buttercup kind of environment, right? Like you just got the job done. And I have to admit, that's who I am. At the core, I'm kind of like hey, let's just get it done, you know, suck it up, tuck your feelings away. You don't cry about anything, you just keep it moving. And so then I will say, after my husband passed away, it was like 8 years ago, people were like, you know, maybe you should try meditating, or what about yoga? And so I would try meditating. I'd be like, oh my gosh, like this guy's getting on my last nerve. Like, I can't just lay here and listen to this, right? And then I would try yoga, and I would, you know, you get to the shavasana at the end, and I'd be like, I gotta go. Like, I've got things to do, you know? And so I couldn't even really relax through yoga and stuff. And then slowly, as time went on, I don't, you know, I get asked this question all the time. What was the turning point for me? And I moved to a new home. And when I moved to that new home, it was near the river. And I would walk to the river every day. And I would sit up at the river, I called it my perch, and I would just overlook the water. And I love water, and I love the moon and everything. And I just became calm. Right? It just became calming. And then working at DHS is a lot of chaos. Like, it was the best job of my career. Absolutely loved it, but it's very chaotic. And I had a big job. One thing that truly, I think, kept me sane, especially like even during COVID and like everything I had to work on, was to just go sit at the river. And so all of a sudden I was like, and then I started like listening, you know, to meditation tapes, and I was like, and I could just do it, right? I could just meditate. And then I was like, well, let me just try yoga again, because I was a gymnast and I loved parts of yoga. I just couldn't lay there. But anyhow, what I learned is then I started going to yoga, and I became one with my yoga mat. I don't know how else to describe it, but it was like the whole world just fell apart, fell away. And I could just lay there and be one with my mat, and I could get clarity, right? And I could and clarity was probably the biggest thing. I could get clarity at work. I could get clarity in my personal life and stuff. Then from there, I was like, well, what is this Reiki? Like, what is this all about? So then I became a Reiki master, right? And I loved it because like when I would be in a meeting and things at work or even at home, but particularly at work, like you can read the energy in the room. And I always could, right? But like becoming
It
a
brought it
Reiki,
out of you.
it brought it out, right?
Yeah.
And so then I went to yoga meditation retreats, loved it. Then I went to a Kashi ashram in Hindu ashram in Florida last year, and
Oh,
that
wow.
was like mind blowing. And so I take all of that, right, and then just mix it in with like contemporary leadership knowledge and learning and experience and things like that. So I've just tried to find a way to weave this all together. But to answer your initial question, it's not like I had an epiphany. It's more like, oh, so this is, wow, this is what it really means, right? To just like kind of just sit with myself and just
Wow.
be with myself and just get clarity for myself in a way that I had never got it before. So I think that that's why I kind of became passionate about it and like trying to help others be able to experience that, right? You're never going to necessarily get everybody to be like, oh, it's nirvana, because it wasn't for me at first.
Right.
Remember, I told you I'd be like, no, I gotta go. I can't lay here. I can't do this. But you know, it's gonna be for whoever it's gonna be for. But I'm a firm believer. I think we change the world one person at a time.
Yeah, that is amazing that you said
Change the
that. I
world.
mean, on two of those points, because I've been trying to merge the wellness with cyber. When I started talking about mind, body, energy, I'm like, oh, it's like people, process, technology, mind, body, energy, and this is how it fits into cybersecurity and the technology field. And 6 years ago, people would be like, okay, that's a very interesting perspective, and we've never
Yeah.
heard that before, but it was still kind of over their head. And then COVID hit, and then I started getting a lot of different people like, hey, can you come back, and didn't you do some really unique talk, and we remembered that. And can you come back and do it again, or tell us more? And it was interesting, like you said, when meditation, I also struggled with. First of all, I didn't have 45 minutes to calm down first and then do the meditation and then stay in that space while I'm in the state of chaos. And
Yeah.
like you, was trying to find ways to, how do I bring all of this to a chaotic field that I'm in?
Right.
And I started breaking things apart into bits and chunks. Like, what if I just do a 5-minute meditation?
Yeah.
But I just do that throughout the day, or, as often as I can. Will that still have the same effect? And I started noticing that it kind of did have the same
Mhm.
effect. In fact, it had a better effect because I was able to factor it in as I'm in the state of chaos, instead of,
Right.
like you were saying, you have to wait till the end of the day, then go to your yoga sessions or meditation sessions, and then you feel great. But then the next morning you're back into a state of chaos. I'm like, oh, well,
Mhm.
is this really working or not?
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah, no, you're right. When I
yeah,
was at DHS, what I would do is I set my alarm, and then after a while you just start getting up, but I would get up 2 hours before my day started. And I would have my coffee, I'd sit on the back porch, listen to the birds, and I would do my meditation. Sometimes I would pull cards, like pull some
oracle
cards.
codes.
Yeah, pull a card, and it'd be like, it would just set my intention for the day, set my day. And it just was a wonder. So I never did it really in the evening. And then in the evenings I would do yoga, which, as they say, is like the highest form of meditation, really. But what's funny is, now that I'm retired, I find I don't have the need to get up and like meditate every morning. I will tell you, when I worked full time, I had a need to do it. Now I find like I feel like I get it just through a walk, right? Or playing golf, or you can get it running, or you can or maybe you're a piano player and you're just going through, a song on the piano. Like, I think what we have to do is that meditation is all about, and that you have to set aside so much time to do it. No, you can get yourself into a meditative state doing many things. In the
Right,
beginning, it was just sitting there looking at the river, right? And
right,
watching the
right.
water, or it's listening to the birds, or it's just mindlessly petting your cat, whatever it is. I
Right.
think that that's really what we're trying to say is like, I read something one time, and I love this about meditation. It said, here's the thing about meditation. If we were all in a room together, and some of us meditated and some of us didn't, and a saber-toothed tiger comes in and is like, is like ready to attack us, we're all going to have the same experience, right? We're all going to freak out. It's not like, okay, so we're all going to freak out. But the person who's meditating, the person who's not meditating is probably then going to be in therapy for a few, maybe years after that, right? Whereas what she said is, but the people who meditate often would be like at the bar that night going, holy crap, you won't believe what happened to me.
Right.
The point is like, meditation doesn't keep you from having the experience. You're still going to have the experience. It just is a way to like help you like even it out so that you're not drowning in the effects of the trauma,
right,
or the experience, and you're instead able to you're able to move yourself through it.
And I would even add, maybe the people that are used to meditating, when they see the tiger, they'll be a little bit, the fear will still kick in, but maybe they won't go into a state of like freeze mode. I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do about this. And this is too much of a fear. It's like, oh, there's a tiger here. All right. Like what is it? Do I run? I'm definitely not going to fight it.
Right.
Where's the next thing? And maybe have them think more logically or calmly in that moment versus just screaming all hell and pushing people and running out. And I have an experience I can share. I went kayaking with a friend recently, and the kayak tipped over. We really don't know what happened, and he lost his keys and his phone, or he thought he lost it, and so he went into a state of panic. Oh, I need my keys, I need my phone. And then I immediately, I think, I'm not trying to boast or anything like that, but I think when you get into, when you meditate a lot, or you are able to get into space of calmness, my brain or my body immediately jumped into, okay, this person is not calm, therefore I need to be calm.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, let's just stay calm. Let me work through this. And I immediately just started using my feet to try to, because luckily it was not enough water to, we could stand in the bottom. And something told me, okay, just remove your shoes and just start feeling it out. And I pretty much ended up finding everything that we came with, the phone, the keys, the bags, and everything. And, he was like, well, how did you do that? I'm like, well, I don't know. Something just told me to take my shoes off, and something told me, look over there. Because for the first few minutes I was looking in the deeper part, and then like, oh, well, maybe I should look in the shallow part, and we found everything there. And it's funny, like you said, if we just take a moment to just get in touch, with our, whatever we want to call it, higher self, or just
absolutely,
or just the state of calmness, like kind of the answers come to us. And but if we're not able to do that, then we're kind of pushing away the answers half the time.
Right. And the other thing about like letting the answers come is like, and so that was a wonderful example that you gave. And sometimes what I would try to do is go, okay, is this my brain talking to me? Is this my mind? But what does my heart say about this? Right. Or feel into the yes, or feel into the no. And that's the other thing that like my business partner, Lynette Sproul's, and she's really good at teaching all of this, but like, how do you feel into a yes? And how do you feel into a no? Because, we talk about our gut instinct and everything. And as you well know, we can push that away. We can use our mind to push that away all day long. And then we'll be like, I knew I was right. Like, I knew I was right. And I let my brain talk me out of it because I didn't want to be that kind of woman, or I didn't want to be that whatever. Right. And so it's interesting when you take the time to just like go back to what I think we were all naturally born with, and whether it's society, or whether it's training, or whether it's, culture, or whatever, it's kind of taken out of us, because, we're always looking for like the metric. Well, how do you know you'll be successful? Well, what problem are you trying to solve? Like we're always like metrics and measures. And it's like, how about if we just be for just a little bit and let the answers come to us?
Yeah. No, that it is wonderful still to me that you're able to bring these concepts into the modern world, and especially in government and kind of male dominated fields. And it's great to see that men are really getting into this now too, because like you said, it can be treated as, oh, this is just some other woo-woo thing or some sort of womanly thing. Like, I'm sure I'll tell my wife and my daughters about it, but now I can see more men getting into it too, which is great.
Yeah, and usually, like what I'll say to them is, guys, you don't have to sit around and, like I said, you don't have to sit there and be like in a meditative state. Go for a run, lift weights, like you do you, right? But the point is how do you learn to calm it all down to where you're here's the thing, whether we have a negative experience or a positive experience, there's like 1,400 chemicals that race through our body, right? And we get addicted to that. So we'll get addicted to the anxiety, we'll get addicted to the abuse, we'll get addicted to a lot of things, because even though it's wrong and it feels bad, it actually feels good because that's what we know. And that's what our body's reacting to. And so a lot of times what we're really trying to do is change the synapses or the transmitters in our brain. I guess it's really the neurons, but you're trying. So by getting yourself more so where you're in coherence and you start changing those neurons, then that rush of chemicals that's going through starts to say, no, okay, that's not feeling good, right? That's not what I want. And so you start rushing through more positive chemicals, then you get addicted to that. Right. And so, those are some of the things, like we would have open conversations about this at DHS. And like whenever I give talks or I talk about the energy in the room, and, as an example, we have like a 3-foot aura. I think science has proven around us. I think it's up to 3 feet.
With 3 to 6 feet, I've heard. Yeah.
6 feet, 3 feet. Like we have this aura around us. So when we're in a room and we're all bumping off of each other, that's why when we walk in a room and people are happy and stuff, we start to feel good, right? But if you walk in a room and it's like tense and you're not tense, but then you start to get tense because you're picking up their energy. Yeah. And so, and when you say that to people, people will be like, oh, that's true. Like I was
mirroring them. Yeah.
Right. You start mirroring that it's not the behavior, you start mirroring the energy that you're feeling, that you're bumping up into. And so, we started talking and sharing with like, okay, how do you change your energy, especially as a leader? How do you change your energy so that the group starts to feed off of that energy and the energy in the room changes? So
that is such a great point. And I think you can even bring that back to your homes, because if you're, let's say your spouse or your partner or whomever, if you spend a lot of time with someone and let's say they're going through something and they are kind of at a low vibration or at a low energy, and you then tend to mirror that, and you try to, if you're at a high energy, you're kind of trying to meet them where they are, but that's not really benefiting anyone because now both of you are in a low energy.
Right, exactly.
Right. And I think it's hard. It's important to keep in mind when that happens to realize like, well, why do I feel low? Like I'm having a great day. And to try to get back up there, or to recognize like, oh, you dipped low now. Okay, so let me get myself back up. And then, it's not mandatory that the other person also tries to get back up, but it'll at least be encouraging and helpful that you stay at your high level. And then hopefully that person will start to slowly kind of mimic or mirror your energy or feed off of your energy, at least it's more of a state of balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. And, in fact, my podcast tomorrow's coming out. It's my second episode with Chip Folgen, my former boss. And we have a conversation about this, about, why it feels good to be around positive people, whether it's in the workplace or it's at home. And so it becomes, it just becomes hugely, it's an important factor. And I think it's important to teach. And we don't have to do it in this like woo-woo kind of space. What I always tried to do, I will tell you this, is anytime I was in the business world, I was always trying to help them see how this went to mission readiness. Like this is because at the end of the day, whether it's an agency, a corporation or whatever, they got to get the mission done. All right. So the fact that you feel good as an employee, or, if you're part of the government, like FEVs, right? Employee engagement. Right. Okay. Everybody runs around, oh, we have to have great engagement scores, and we work really hard at this. And it's not that people don't care. They do care about that. But at the end of the day, why do they care? Because we got to get the mission done.
Right.
And if you're
Right.
not engaged, right, or if you're not at a high energy level, or you're not at any of those things, we're not going to get the mission done.
Right.
And so that's the one thing that I really learned was like how to talk about this in a language in which they understood the end result was going to be positive for them and getting things done. Because
Right.
you can easily show the side effects or the bad effects of not operating in this kind of environment, right? That's why you have things where I thought it was, you've seen the cases, and this wasn't DHS, this was, local police, but you've heard the cases like, I didn't know, I thought it was my taser, and they pulled out a gun, right? And they shot somebody instead of using their taser or whatever it was that they were trying to use. And it's because like, it's natural, you're hyped up, you're all these things, but how do we help them then bring it back down?
Right. Right.
So that they can manage themselves and manage themselves through a particular situation.
Right. So, so that kind of leads me to the next question on, we've talked about what we can do in the moment of chaos or in a moment of stress. Now, I've heard that every successful person has some sort of ritual, whether it's a morning ritual, afternoon, or daily ritual, or something you do throughout the day that enables their day. So I know you've talked a little bit about you try to take care of your meditations, or you used to in the mornings, or is there something that you do just on an everyday basis right now? And then also, is there anything that you did when you were in this heightened state of chaos, when you were working for the government or other organizations?
Well, I mean, as I touched on for the heightened, whenever I was at DHS and it was a much, much more heightened, stressful environment. Yes, my ritual became for like 6 years was I would wake up 2 hours early. I would make my coffee. I would go sit on the back porch, or in the winter, I'd sit by the fireplace inside. I would have my coffee and I would meditate. And most often I would pull a card too. Just because there was always a positive message that came with the card. And so that's how I would basically begin my day. And then how I would end my day is I would often walk up. If I wasn't going to yoga, I would walk up to the river. And I would sit up at the river. And then during COVID, because I was at home, I would walk up during the middle of the day, like at lunchtime, and I would spend my lunch by the water in the river. So that became my grounding space. And I knew that. And then the truth is I would always have a drink at night at the end of the day. And I will tell you, for me, it is psychological. It is maybe a mental thing, mental well-being thing for me. And it's not excessive drinking. It's just that having a drink at the end of the day, always, and I mean, I probably have done that for 40 years, right? Yeah. Always signified to me the end of the day. It like I would never do the 4 o'clock happy hour kind of thing. Even retired, I don't do that. It always just meant, oh my gosh, the day is over. I just get to relax, right? And so that was my ritual.
Was there a particular drink of choice, like red wine or just anything?
So it's funny, in the winter I do like red wine, but oh man, I guess I shouldn't admit this, but I love gin over the rocks. I love whiskey. I love bourbon. So I like the liquors, and I like them just on the rocks. I don't like them foo-foo or anything like that. Right. Just
I am a total single malt Scotch fan, and
yes, I love Scotch. Yes.
And it definitely has a different kick to it because you don't feel intoxicated, you just feel relaxed,
and you can feel it running through your body, right?
Well, I have tried to prove this for years. I think there's scientific articles that Scotch and whiskey have the most amount of antibiotic properties. I'm see, I'm doing it for health purposes, yes. They have proven this.
What's funny is I was talking to my doctor the other day, and we were talking about weight and stuff like that. And she said, well, do you drink? And I said, yes. And she said, well, what do you drink? And I said, Scotch and whiskey and gin. She goes, well, listen, if you're going to drink, those are the best things you could be drinking.
There you go.
So there you go. That's doctor approved. And I was like, oh, Not that I needed
Especially if it's on the
validation.
rocks and you're not mixing it with like sodas and,
Yeah, no,
seltzers and
no.
things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't.
I'm glad we have that in common.
We do have that in common. So you asked me like now that I'm retired, like I have a ritual, like my partner and I, we don't live together. He has a home somewhere else in here. I would say every morning, like I just, when we're not together, I love like sending him a little note in the morning, a little, personal note in the morning. I love taking my dog for a walk every morning. He gets walked and stuff. So I have these little rituals. I still do my coffee. I still go out. I still listen to the birds. I now love to do Wordle. That's my thing now. Love to do Wordle. And and maybe a crossword puzzle or something like that. And I love to play golf and things. So I have different activities and different things that I do, but I still have these little rituals, I would say, of little things I like to do. And then in the evening, I still enjoy like either it's like hit the golf course or have a drink or just sit and relax with Tom or whatever it is that we're doing. And that to me is really quite enjoyable.
That is great. That is great.
Yeah.
So let's go to the next question. A lot of people usually fear chaos or change, but really change is the only constant in life. And I know you've experienced a lot of change over the years, personally as well as professionally. Are there any wellness or life hacks that you've used to navigate all the changes in your life?
Well, I love change for one thing. And I think I thrive and do best in a chaotic environment because for 40 years, that's what I worked in. And, but that doesn't mean that you always thrive in it or enjoy it. I just happen to love it, right? To me, it was always like, oh, like you had, so many balls in the air and you had all these different things that I was doing. So I will tell you though, that the hack that I think that I tried to use and I tried to do this a lot at DHS. I probably learned it a little bit better there, is to triage, right? So what I mean by that is you can't solve everything. You just can't work on everything. You can't solve everything. So I would take all the thousands of priorities that I had and just triage them and say, these I can take care of now. These I can get to in a little bit.
Right.
These, I don't know when I'm going to get to these. Okay. When we do, but it's not going to be today, because I can remember staff would sometimes come to me and go, Angie, we have all these priorities and and I don't know what to do first. And, can you prioritize for me? And I would always say, no, they're all a priority. Like I didn't say
Right.
none of these priorities were a priority. I just said, I just bucketed them into what the heck can I do today? What can I do tomorrow? And what can I maybe get to whenever I can get to? It doesn't mean that it's not important. It just means I don't have the energy, the time, the resources, whatever, to be able to do it. So that was probably my biggest hack, if you will.
Okay.
The other thing, and you kind of mentioned this as well for yourself, like your kayaking trip and stuff. I have a tendency that when things get incredibly stressful and chaotic, for whatever reason, I get incredibly calm, focused.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
very, very, very calm and very, very focused. And so as a result, it's like all the noise and chaos that's going on around me kind of stays out here. And I just get like this. And I get right to what it is that I really need to do. And then the third thing I will say is I learned that perfectionism is a killer. So what I always try to do is just say, look, guys, we're just going to go for the 80% solution and we'll clean up
Right.
the other 20% later, or
Right.
we won't. Okay. But 80% is good enough because we don't have time for everything. We don't have time for 100%, and 100% is never going to be good enough anyhow, because there's always going to be somebody who thinks it should have been something different or
Right.
whatever. So
Right.
those were probably my three hacks, if you will, of how I learned to, just manage the chaos. But again, the truth is I thrive in the chaos.
Yeah, I feel the same way. In fact, it's interesting because when you're in a state of chaos, I'm like, oh, I can't wait for the day for this thing to be done or this situation to be resolved, and then that happens, and usually the satisfaction when it happens isn't as great as you thought it was going to be. I'm like, oh, okay, well, it's about time this concluded, but I don't really feel as great as I thought it was going to be when this happens.
Right.
So I've gotten used to, or I've learned over the years to like, why don't we just enjoy the day? This is the state that we're in today, and enjoy the process and learn to surrender and, to a higher
Mhm.
power. Everything's happening for a reason. And it's hard sometimes because when you're going through certain situations, especially in your personal life, I found, I feel like in my work life, I'm like, okay, I got this covered. Whatever state of chaos I'm in, I'm able to focus because it's not personal. But
Right.
when in your personal life, if there's a certain situation that you're looking forward to happen, I have found that, okay, well, am I really going to feel, as fulfilled as I think I am when it happens?
Mhm.
Well, why don't I just start feeling fulfilled right now as I'm going through this journey?
Right.
Because nothing, for me at least, nothing was ever so amazing when it actually happened. It felt great. Yep, I'm glad I'm done with this, or this situation happened, or that happened, or this event happened. But then, well, you spend so long getting there. They're like, okay, check out. I'm
Right.
I'm good with this, and moving on to the next thing.
Yeah, because in some ways, then to your point, like you didn't really enjoy the journey, right? And
Right.
and look, that took me a long time to figure that out. I mean,
Yeah.
that was because I was next job, what's the next house, what's the next
Right.
vacation. Like I'd be on vacation thinking about the next
Next
vacation.
part.
I'd be building a house thinking about the next house. And in fact, it became a joke, was we would always say like, well, in our next house, right, or our next. And so and I wish I would have learned all of this like whenever my kids were younger, right, to just have been perhaps more present in the moment, even with the kids, because you're just constantly thinking about the next thing. And
Next
so
thing. Right. Right.
hopefully now that I have grandchildren, right, I'm a little bit more present in the moment. And I don't know if my kids would say I was or I wasn't. I tried to be there for everything and make sure that I was there. But in looking back on it, I wish I would have known then what I know now, right, that
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
journey's going to be okay. And like all the things that have happened to me personally, I've had personal tragedies and things. And the thing that I've learned about all of this is I'm going to be okay. Like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I'm just going to be okay. And so to your point, I love when you said, like, you have to trust the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
It's
have,
hard. It can be challenging,
it
but
can
you
be,
have to. Yeah.
but it's, you're gonna get there.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of our last questions is, we're all connected to technology these days, our kids, or even from a very young age. It has just become the norm now. Do you have any thoughts on countering some of the adverse effects on the mind, body, and energy when it comes to like obsessive use of technology?
Well, I would agree. Like I do worry about it because even the social connection, like if you've noticed, like people, I can remember like being out or something and watching a couple like be at dinner and like they're both on their phones, like they're not even talking to each other, right? They're like they're both on their phones. I don't know if they're talking to each other on their phones or if they're talking to other people, whatever. But and then I with the little kids too, like consistently on this. And there just seems to be this very much of this social human connection breakdown. And so I mean, I worry about that quite a bit. I worry about AI because, there's still humans behind AI. I mean,
Right.
it's
Right.
not like this is like downloaded from some higher power into an
Right.
AI. It's still
Right.
humans, right? And so I don't know that I have an answer for you other than to tell you that I do worry about it and I see the effects of it, uh,
Yeah.
every day. And it's very disconcerting. And I even like whenever we went home, everybody wants to like stay at home and remote work and nobody wants to come back into the office and things. But there was something to be said for that social connectedness that happened in an office setting, right?
Right.
Or over lunch or at the water cooler or at Starbucks or whatever it is that what people were doing. And so how do you fulfill that need then when you're no longer establishing a culture in which that's important?
Right.
And so I think that, somehow we have to figure out ways to still come together, to collaborate, to create, to celebrate, because absent that, I think it's a pretty lonely existence.
It is. And kids these days, my oldest daughter is 12, and it's funny because one of her friends came over yesterday for a hangout, because it's not considered play dates anymore when you're 12.
Yeah.
And they were just like, oh, what do you guys want to do? Like, oh, we're just going to hang. I'm like, oh, okay, well, what are you going to hang in the house? So it was thunderstorming outside, so you can't go
Right.
outside. And they both are just on their phones. And I would keep checking. I'm like, oh, you guys need anything? Like, no. I'm like, oh, are you okay? And their mom came by later on. She's like, yeah, that's how kids hang these days. They just sit side by side, and both of them are on some app or something or other, and they aren't really, or they're talking to each other on the app.
Right.
And I'm like,
Right.
wow, you're like 5 inches from this person. You could just actually have a conversation, because I didn't hear any
Yeah.
talking and that. I'm like, what is going on? And and
Yes.
that's just their norm. And I know my daughter, like the moment she comes home from school, she's on her gadgets, and all throughout the day. And I've literally had to, I've had to go and like, okay, no more gadgets, like meal
Right.
times, no gadgets. And once we're done with the meal times, that doesn't mean you immediately get back on the gadgets either. Put it down and learn to associate with people in person, talk to people, talk to us, we're your family. And she's gotten I don't know if you do a lot of journaling. I started getting into that recently too. And this has been helpful for, I think, the preteens, or to just kind of journal how they're feeling sometimes and put it on
Yeah.
paper if they don't feel like expressing it to someone. But she's also gotten into, to give her kudos, if she doesn't feel like she can express herself in a respectful manner verbally, she's learned to just kind of, all right, I need to go to my room right now and actually write it out what she
Oh,
wants to say,
yeah.
and then later on she'll give it
Yeah.
to me, like, oh, this is why I behave this way. And I'm like, okay, well, that's, I could write you back. That's I feel like that's a healthy way of, to kind of introduce the get off the gadgets. And if you don't feel like you can say something
Mhm.
in a nice way or in a respectful manner, even if you disagree, then I'm okay with you going to your room and writing it out and then sending it, or
Yeah.
giving it. Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Angela, for joining us today. I know you have a very special event coming up. Would you like to tell the audience about your leadership experience event?
I sure would. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to do so. So since I retired, one of my biggest dreams was to create a really unique and memorable and foundational leadership experience, and one that really explores all aspects of the human experience as a leader. So I am really thrilled to announce that we're going to host the Story Behind the Story, Leading Ladies of Gettysburg. It's August 13th through the 15th at the Gettysburg Hotel. It's going to be a 2.5-day immersive experience that provides individuals and teams with an unmatched opportunity to explore the strength, courage, resiliency, and leadership of the women who were left behind during the Battle of Gettysburg. So often the battle is done from a very male military perspective, and there is a ton of learning to be learned from that. But there's a story also about the women who were left behind and their resiliency and strength and courage. So we're going to do deep and meaningful connections between the past and present challenges, whether it's like in the homes and streets of Gettysburg, or it's in the boardrooms and the C-suites of corporations and government agencies. This elevated experience, anchored in ancestral wisdom and blended with contemporary leadership knowledge, is intended to provide the foundation leaders at all levels in the organization need to lead themselves and those who entrust their lives in them. So I'm super excited. Perhaps you can join us. That would be wonderful.
Wow, that sounds amazing. I've never heard of anything like that. I've only heard of, just normal corporate leadership programs or completely, wellness retreats and wellness programs. This seems like it's combining everything together, which sounds
Yeah.
amazing. And from a woman perspective as well.
Yes. So I'm happy to share with you the flyer if you'd like it with the information on it. So yeah, it's
Sure. Well,
exciting.
thank you so much. And then we will definitely put that on our YouTube channel as well as on the website. Would you also be able to tell the audience where they could find you if they'd like to reach out to you?
Sure. If they would like to write to me, they can write to me at the story behind the story at AnandaLife.org. So I can give that to you if you
Yep, we
need
will.
to.
Yeah, we will definitely post all of the links and information on your events on our YouTube channel and also on the website as well for people to look at. And any last words of wisdom for our technology community and really anyone out there?
I would say, just from words of wisdom would just be, I think, just be your authentic self, right? And in being your authentic self, I think you have to spend the time to kind of sit with yourself and find out who you are, and then be that person. Because I think that that's where it brings the most happiness to you, is whenever you come from a place in which you really kind of know yourself. And I think we spend so much time factoring in what external sources have to say, whether it's social media, or it's the technology or whatever. And I think so much of the answers are right within ourselves. And so that's my recommendation, is be your authentic self, but take the time to get in touch with yourself first.
All right. Sounds great to me. I've been trying to work on that, and I know it's a process, but I just keep doing my best every day to bring back my authentic self.
Good.
Thank you so much, Angela. That's a wrap, folks. Thank you so much for listening. We will have all the links and information on the Leadership Experience event on our YouTube channel, as well as the website. And see you all every third Wednesday of the month to focus on your wellness from within.
Super.
Great. Yeah.
I just sent